Hello, everybody. My name is Ansgar Licher. I am the CEO from LW Systems in Germany. We are a systems integrator and cloud service provider, and we are very pleased to be your host for this event today. Today we have Zimbra in our event list of LW Systems online days, and we are very happy to have Zimbra as a partner here on board. They will bring you the latest information about Zimbra collaboration and groupware. And so use the time to listen and of course use the possibility to ask your questions whenever you have one. Just put them into the chat window and we will answer the questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you very much. And now I want to give over to Andrew Schingler, who will present us Zimbra today.
Thank you, Ansgar. And hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Andrew Schingler. I'm a senior sales engineer with Synacor, responsible for the Zimbra product line. So today I want to give you an overview of who we are, what is Zimbra as a product, what sort of features and capabilities does it have, and probably looking at some of the sort of particular areas where Zimbra we see it excels and certain markets that we see are dominant within our marketplace. So obviously at the core of Zimbra is email, and as we all know, email is not going anywhere. It's been around for many, many years and it's still here many, many years later. And that's, there's various reasons for that, and particularly, these days in everyone working from home, also in terms of just being able to communicate across different organizations, between different geographies. Yeah, it is completely ubiquitous. It's a very well-known standard. So in terms of being able to have that global communication, it is the standard means of communication between different organizations and between customers and organizations and so on. And there are a number of reasons for that. One is, it's very fast, it's very affordable, it's widely available at, low cost. So email is still very much part and parcel of our daily communication. It is completely effortless. Information comes to you and not the other way around. It's not a case of you're having to sit there and request it. The communications comes directly to you. And also it is personal. We use email in our business life. We use email in our personal lives. We can organize around it. We can create groups around it. We can communicate securely and privately with email, which is unlike some of the social media platforms. So it is still very much ingrained in everybody's mechanism to communicate. The other beauties of email is traditionally, it has a historical record. You can always go back and look back at communications that you've had in the past. You can see the discussions that have gone around certain topics. I know personally, I keep literally every single email I receive. So, I will go back into my mailbox to look back over years to find, communications that I've had with other partners, with other organizations. And so I've got that full record of what's gone on in the past. It is very open. It's very decentralized because it is built on open standards. It is a reliable means of communication that you can be relied on in terms of knowing that that communication is going to get to that person or that organization that you're communicating with. Well, I think the other thing that appeals to a lot of people and why people still use email extensively is because it's asynchronous. So unlike a lot of communication platforms out there, it gives you time to communicate. So you can receive an email, but you don't feel that you have to reply straight away. You've got time to be, a bit more thoughtful about how you're going to respond and what you're going to respond. So that sort of asynchronous communication allows you more flexibility in terms of how you go about communication with your colleagues, your customers, your partners, and so on. So it's here to stay, and it's growing as we know. So in terms of us and Zimbra, I mean, collaboration kind of is our mission. So we've started out in 2007 with the first incarnation of Zimbra, and we've built upon that. And obviously, as more applications come along and more collaboration is required, we've taken that central email system, we've built additional functionality around that. So we have added in things like file storage. So it's not just an email communication tool. Obviously, you've got calendaring involved in there. Actually, calendaring, to be honest, is very much the kind of the killer app in any organization, because we all revolve our daily lives around, you know, what we're doing at certain times. So calendaring becomes crucial to that. And then adding on to that, things like file storage, the ability to store documents and content within the same environment that we're communicating with our colleagues with, being able to share that data with those other users and be able to collaborate around that that content as well. And adding on to that, we added in things like document editing. So, you know, the ability to be able to collaborate in real time around a particular document with, you know, more, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 users, where you can essentially edit and refine and update a document in real time, all at the same time. So that ability to do that collaborative work together is brought together within Zimbra itself and within the core product. The extension of that is obviously chat. So the ability I talked about, you know, email is an asynchronous communication tool, but there are times when you want to have that instantaneous communication. You want to be able to sort of have that easy to and fro communication between one of your peers or within a group discussion. So within Zimbra, we have a built-in chat capability within there as well. And then to extend that further, we then build in video conferencing. So when the communication has gone beyond what can be achieved through normal email or through chat or just general collaborative tools, then video conferencing can be launched directly from within the Zimbra clients. So it's a very quick and easy way to build you know, groups and teams, and then to be able to sort of quickly communicate either visually or via audio and chat and so on. So at the core of Zimbra, we've got all those capabilities. But we recognize that there are other ecosystems out there, and there are other systems that organizations may have adopted or their users are, you know, familiar with using. So we never want to be prescriptive in the sense that we're saying, well, this is the tool that we provide and this is the tool that you have to use. So, you know, because Zimbra is built on an open source core platform with a lot of open APIs and a development framework around it, we can do integrations with other third-party services. Now, we as Zimbra and the organization and the development team at Zimbra, we actually develop some of those integrations ourselves. So there's some examples here that we're showing. So we've done integrations with things like Zoom for video conferencing, or Jitsi. Jitsi is actually an open source video conferencing service which you can either run as there's a SaaS service you can leverage, or potentially you can even deploy it in your own environment. Similarly, things like WebEx, which we're using today in terms of providing this conference to you. Then other aspects, you know, around the sort of chat and group chat communication, we've created integrations with Slack. Again, we've got integration with Zulip, which is for want of a better description, is an open source version or equivalent of Slack. And again, it's something that potentially you can deploy in your own data center and have full control over. Then other integrations we've created, obviously there's a lot of file sync and share mechanisms, you know, that are commonly in use. So things like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, and similarly Nextcloud, again, is an open source equivalent of those technologies. So the ability to be able to leverage external services and to integrate, sort of in a more seamless way within Zimbra means that you don't necessarily have to throw out those tools that all your users have become used to, or you don't have to throw out an investment that you've already invested in. It means that you can still utilize those within your Zimbra environment. But at the same time, we build a lot of core functionality, of similar functionality within Zimbra itself. And as time goes on, we're just extending those integrations. And as I mentioned, the fact that because there's a development framework, if you have some specific service or tool or internal line of business application, then potentially you can integrate Zimbra with those applications as well, using the framework and using the APIs that are available. So we are a sort of proven system. As I say, we've been around, we've been in existence since sort of 2006, 2007. We have thousands of customers who are running essentially millions of mailboxes across the globe. We have a global presence in terms of our customer base. Those customers range from, just a small organization that might be just running literally 20, 25 mailboxes, right up to some service providers and retail ISP consumer service providers who are running millions of mailboxes on their platform. We've done a lot around security. What we see today is there's still a demand for deploying an internal on-premises collaboration and communication systems. So there are certain government organizations or certain financial institutions where the idea of moving to sort of general cloud service is not something that they're willing to take at this moment in time. So there's still a big market in terms of that on-premises deployment. And scalability, as I mentioned there, we scale from just a few mailboxes right up to millions of mailboxes, and that's proven throughout the years and through our customer base today. So just to give you a little flavor of some of the customers that we have that are using Zimbra today. So we've got quite a wide range of, say, different types of verticals, different organizations. We've got banks, we've got research agencies, we have universities, local government, central government, and ISPs, that are servicing consumers as well. I mean, Telenet is a good example of a large-scale platform in Belgium, and they run in the region of 2 million mailboxes for their consumer users. But then, other organizations like some of the research ones are still, they're running at the scale of sort of 50, 100,000 users on their Zimbra platform. So a wide range of different types of users who would be very demanding in terms of the features and functionality that are required for their end users. So where do we excel in terms of, what's our sweet spot in terms of Zimbra and Zimbra collaboration? So low TCO is one thing that we've always focused on, that ability to provide a platform and a solution at a good cost and with low sort of operational costs and so on. And that is built up through a number of factors. So at the core of it is obviously a licensing of our software. We have a very simple licensing model. It's essentially one mailbox, one license. So we don't have any concept of server licenses. We don't have any concept of CALs. It literally is, one mailbox, one license. You can deploy as much infrastructure to run that as you want. We don't care how many servers you've got it running on. That's really up to you. So that plays into that low TCO. Then the other aspect of it is in terms of infrastructure. So we're a purely Linux-based application. So there are choices that can be made in terms of the operating systems that Zimbra runs on. It's primarily, the ones that we support are Red Hat, CentOS, Ubuntu, and Oracle Linux. Now, within that portfolio of different operating systems, you've got choices that you can make there that can reduce your costs. So, if you want to go down the subscription route, you can go for the Red Hat option, because obviously there's support from Red Hat and so on, but there's a cost involved in there. But if you don't want to necessarily go down that route, you've still got things like CentOS and Ubuntu, where essentially you can run those operating systems at no cost. Then from a hardware perspective, obviously we try and leverage as much commodity hardware as possible. Obviously it needs to be sufficiently performant to be able to handle the load that's in there. But in terms of the footprint that Zimbra requires, it is lower than you would see in other types of technologies or similar technologies in our industry. And the fact that you can utilize different types of storage. So storage often becomes a large factor in the cost of running a collaboration platform. So we support obviously traditional block storage that's available on Linux systems. It could be just NFS or SATA disks, but we also support things like S3 storage. So that's object storage. So we support things like Amazon AWS S3. We support other object stores that support the S3 protocol. So there's quite a few out there, things like OpenIO, Swift, and so on. And even if it's not a technology or an object store that we've not come across, as long as it supports the S3 protocol, then that can be utilized as well. So again, trying to sort of keep the cost down. And then finally, from a management perspective, Zimbra is known to be easy to manage, easy to operate, so it doesn't necessarily need hordes of operators to keep the thing running. We talked about scalability. We've got proven scalability from very small to very large systems. So we've proven that within the market. And as I say, from a security and privacy point of view, we put a lot of effort into making sure the data is secure, the interfaces are secure in terms of using encrypted connections and so on. We support things like S-MIME encryption. From a data sovereignty point of view, the fact that you can deploy essentially on premises in your own data center, you've got full control of all that data, and you know that where it resides and where it goes. So we always make sure that it's secure within that environment. Anytime, anywhere. So because we're open source or core, we support as many of the open standards as possible, but also we support a lot of proprietary protocols because they become very much the industry norm. So things like ActiveSync for mobile synchronization is a common technology and a common protocol that we utilize. Open core, the fact that we build Zimbra as an open source platform, we then license it by adding additional features, additional capabilities like built-in backup, storage management systems, connectivity to different clients and so on. So we enhance our open source offering with additional value there. And then from a deployment standpoint, as I say, it could be deployed on-prem. You could deploy it in the cloud. We have many customers that run Zimbra in AWS, or you could do a hybrid of the two. So, again, we're not prescriptive in terms of, what cloud platforms you might use or infrastructure as a service that you may use. This slide kind of summarizes everything within Zimbra, or pretty much everything in terms of what's available from an end user perspective and from the back end. So at the core, you've got the Zimbra collaboration server itself, which, as I say, is a Linux-based application. Then we spend a lot of work and effort on the Zimbra web client. So to give the end user as a rich an experience in terms of being able to interact with Zimbra and surface all the potential capabilities of Zimbra, we build that into the Zimbra web client. So we're giving users a very performant experience within a browser, and they can collaborate and communicate through that mechanism. We support all the sort of usual standards in terms of browsers, so Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, and so on. I mean, they need to be relatively up-to-date browsers because we obviously leverage a lot of the newer capabilities of the newer browsers and so on. But and it is a responsive UI as well, so it will adapt to the form factor that we've seen there. Then in the bottom left corner, for users that want desktop capability, we have a number of mechanisms to provide that. So we support usual standards that are familiar with email and collaboration systems. So we support POP and IMAP, which are very commonly used by desktop clients. We support CalDAV and CardDAV for calendar synchronization and address book synchronization. But then also we provide a connector for Outlook. So for users that are familiar with Outlook as a client, we provide a connector that allows them to work with Zimbra in the back end seamlessly and give them, you know, a very rich user experience of using Outlook against Zimbra. And in fact, you can use Outlook with an Exchange ActiveSync interface as well. So potentially you can synchronize, you know, email, contacts, calendar, and tasks and so on through that. For your Apple Mac users, again, we support all the standards-based stuff for Mac users, for if they're using the native clients. But then we also support EWS, which is Exchange Web Services. So Outlook on a Mac, unlike on a Windows, which uses MAPI as its protocol, on a Mac it uses EWS. So we build an EWS interface into Zimbra that allows Outlook to function on an Apple Mac device, and again be able to synchronize mail, contacts, calendaring data and task data to the desktop client. From a mobile perspective, I mentioned some of these already. So we do build the ActiveSync interface into Zimbra. So that gives them, you know, sort of the ability to use the native applications on the devices via ActiveSync. We again have all the standards-based stuff, so POP3 IMAP, CalDAV, CardDAV, which is quite well supported by, particularly by iOS actually. And then there is the UI, the web client is actually responsive, so it will adapt to a tablet device or to a mobile device in terms of that form factor. So it's a very usable web interface within mobile devices as well. Then finally, in terms of interoperability with other systems, at the core of Zimbra is an open LDAP server in terms of all our configuration, our authentication database, and our routing information and so on. But we recognize that people have already invested in other identity management systems, or they want to utilize something like Active Directory. So we can configure Zimbra to be able to authenticate users into Active Directory, or they could potentially be authenticated into another third-party identity management system. As long as it's an LDAP-based system, there's usually some level of integration that can be created. And then from a Microsoft Exchange point of view, we can do some level of interoperability between Zimbra and Exchange, and that's primarily used in a migration scenario where your users are migrating from Exchange to Zimbra, and we can coexist the two platforms together. Or sometimes some organizations actually run Exchange and Zimbra in parallel, so they might have a sort of centralized corporate Exchange server for their corporate users, but then they might have a lot of boundary workers or field workers where they don't want to invest in all the Exchange licensing and so on for it, so they deploy Zimbra and they set up interoperability between the two. So you can exchange things like FreeBSD information and so on. So I talked about the web client. So as I say, this is something that we have developed. It's a relatively recent development in the last couple of years, where we've updated the user interface from what was our original one. We brought it more up to date using a framework from React. React is a technology that's used with a lot of systems out there. Things like Facebook and Slack use React as their interface technology. And it means it brings that responsiveness, but then it also brings the ability to start doing more levels of integration, being able to sort of integrate other different services and to extend the capabilities of Zimbra using a framework that we actually call Zimlitz. So Zimlitz is our integration framework, and it means that we can extend it very easily and quickly, and adding in new functionality using that framework. So I mentioned that we've created integrations with some of the common technologies and SaaS services that are out there today, things like Zoom and Slack and Dropbox. And that relies very much on the fact that we have an extensive API. I mean, because of our open source roots, we've always had a very open API available within Zimbra. So there's an extensive SOAP and REST API that partners and customers can develop against. We create the integration framework that creates a framework to allow you to build these integrations. And it's very common for some of our customers to actually start integrating some of their line of business applications or just into some kind of SaaS service that they may have been using for many years or they want to use in the future. But then we, as I say, we create some of the integrations ourselves. So, around things like chat and video capability, Office Suite integration. I talked about the fact that we have a document editing capability. We actually use LibreOffice at the back end of that to do the rendering and the document editing capability. We're actually working on also providing that via OnlyOffice. So that's another technology that provides online office document editing and so on. And then obviously things like cloud storage and so on. So the fact that we created this framework just means that we have a very easy way of extending and creating a platform that is relevant to different organizations, or for the organization themselves to take that framework and build the line of business applications that are relevant to them. Now, I wanted to go back. I talked about the connector for Outlook, and this has always been quite an important part of Zimbra, the Zimbra technology. And the reason for that is that many users are very familiar with Outlook. They've probably used it for years and they don't like change. So the fact that we create this Outlook connector means that those users, even though you might be changing the underlying mail server platform from whatever it was, be it Exchange or something else, to Zimbra, they can still continue to use a client that's familiar to them. And we create the connector so it gives the full capability that you would expect with Outlook. So you get the full synchronization of mail and contacts and calendaring and tasks. You can do sharing and delegation as you would expect in those environments. You have access offline to the global address list. It synchronizes things like out of office, rules, filters, and so on between there. So they get a very rich Outlook experience, even though they're using Zimbra in the back end. And from a migration perspective, it makes things easier because you're not necessarily having to change the end user experience, even though you're moving them onto a different platform. And that's important. I mean, obviously we like people to use the different clients and the web client, and sometimes organizations then transition their users to using the web client because that's easy from a management and a desktop management point of view. So it's an important part of the tool set within Zimbra. ActiveSync, as I mentioned, more and more people like to be mobile, like to be able to access their collaboration platforms from their mobile devices, their tablets. So again, even though we are, at our core, we're an open source company, we recognize that there are proprietary protocols that are so ubiquitous that we have to adopt them within our platform. So we build a fully functional ActiveSync interface into Zimbra to provide access to mobile devices and tablets. But the other thing is that ActiveSync also not only does the synchronization, but it does also provide some level of mobile device management capability. So ActiveSync as a protocol will support things like remote wipe, security, encryption on the device. It will support also things like we also support a feature called ABQ, which is Allow Block Quarantine. So that allows an administrator to control which devices are allowed to connect to the platform. So when a user connects to the platform for the first time from their mobile device, if the administrator is set up in such a way, he can put that into quarantine until he decides, yes, I'm going to let that user connect. Or as an administrator, you can provision a whole list of mobile device IDs onto the platform before they get provisioned. So when that user comes in with their device, it's got a valid device identifier that's in your list. You will automatically let them synchronize to the Zimbra platform. If it's not, then it will get blocked. So it means that you can control access to the platform and ensure that users who are issued with corporate devices are only using corporate devices to access the platform. The administration side of Zimbra, as I say, it's it's a simple administration interface. You just literally access it through a web browser, and you can do pretty much all the daily tasks that you would want your operators to be able to perform. So being able to sort of handle the backups, be able to do bulk provisioning, set up delegated administration roles, creating multi-tenancy within there, doing a lot of the storage management and archiving mechanisms within the admin interface. So, and if it's a when you access the admin interface, regardless of the size of your platform, whether you're literally just running one server in your environment or your Zimbra environment consists of 100 servers, it's all accessed through the same single browser interface. So you've got a single pane of glass to manage the entire environment, and that leads to a lot of savings in terms of your daily operations and so on, being a simple platform to manage and operate. There are certain things that might require command line access, usually more complicated setups and so on. And also the fact that there is a command line, everything that you do in the administration console has an equivalent command line operation. So it means you can script routines, you can automate them. So everything that's done in the web console can also be done as a scripted or a command line operation. So we have a built-in backup. There's a lot of other features in Zimbra, but one of the things we do have is a built-in backup, and we actually use a real-time backup mechanism, which is unlike traditional backups where you do sort of a full backup on a Sunday and then you do incremental backups the following 6 days. Zimbra's backup actually is a real-time backup, so it gets written to a file system in real time, so it's always up to date. So it's more similar to a transaction log on a database. So it means that you've always got that up-to-date backup of what's gone on the system and all the transactions that have happened on the system. And in terms of restoration, you can actually restore right from like an individual item in a user's mailbox right up to restoring an entire mailbox server. So, and the majority of those restoration processes can be done from that administration console. So if you've deleted an account, you can recover it. If a user comes to you and says, I've lost this folder, you can restore the folder, or you can do a time-bound recovery and they say, well, I deleted something, I think between this day and this day. You can just recover all the items within that period of time and put it into a separate folder in their mailbox, and they can go and find the item themselves. So a lot of flexibility around that backup mechanism, and it also does a lot of storage saving as well. So it will do deduplication, it will do compression as well, so you can reduce the amount of storage that is required to keep the backups as well. So they're the main areas, and hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavor for what Zimbra is and what it consists of and where we feel that we excel. In terms of your journey, in terms of an interest in Zimbra, we have a lot of resources on our website. All our documentation is publicly available on our website. We have regular blog articles. We have a wiki in terms of technical information and so on, lots of case studies and white papers and so on. And if you are interested in actually just taking a look at Zimbra, we've got a number of options there. You can go to our website. You can literally just ask for a trial demo account, and that's like an online demo system that you will be immediately logged into, and you can go and play around to your heart's content to see what the web client capabilities are. Or if you wanted to actually deploy it in your own environment on a test basis, you can request a trial license key, and the trial license key is valid for up to 50 mailboxes for a period of 60 days. And then you can download and deploy Zimbra in your own environment. You know, a simple test system only needs to consist of, you know, a single virtual machine with about 8 gig of RAM and a couple of virtual CPUs and a bit of storage underneath it, and you can deploy that in your own environment and test it there. But yeah, so if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A panel, but otherwise I'll hand you back.
Yes,
thank you
very much, Andrew. Yes, hopefully you have got a lot of information, and now it's just time, a few minutes for your questions and answers. So just use the time. We will finish right in time in 6 minutes, so just use the time. And feel free, of course, to ask your questions also in German. We can translate them easily to English and then give you the answer and so on. And if you may have some questions afterwards of this event, just feel free to contact us or contact Zimbra, and we will keep care for the answers you may require.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew and Ansgar. I see a first question. What is the best video conference tool you would recommend to be used with Zimbra between Zoom, Slack, Jitsi, and Zebra?
That's a difficult one. It really depends on, a lot of it depends on scale. I mean, the built-in video conferencing capability within Zimbra is based on WebRTC. It's very good for kind of ad hoc small meetings of 5-6 people, and because it's a peer-to-peer based technology, it doesn't handle a large number of users, because it requires, it then takes up the resource in users. But for small group gatherings where you just want instantaneous kind of quick chat type video conferences, the built-in stuff is good. But if you require high levels of numbers of users, sort of 50 or 100 users, then you really need to look at things like Jitsi or Zoom, WebEx, those types of technology. And then when you get into the realms of like moderation, which is a bit like we're using here, so our WebEx environment we're using here today has a lot of moderation controls, Q&A panels, that type of thing. So it kind of depends on, well, what's your, what's the scale that you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to do big broadcasts, or, is it just for small ad hoc communications and so on? Just in terms of our roadmap and what we're doing is that we're actually going to be building Jitsi into Zimbra as a much tighter integration. Now, Jitsi, has a lot of those capabilities, but also it has the advantage of, if you want to deploy it in your own environment, you can do that. So it's a difficult one to answer because it kind of depends on what the set of requirements are. What a lot of people don't appreciate sometimes is that, some people say, well, the built-in Zimbra stuff, can I host 500 users on it? The problem is that if you compare it with something like Zoom or Teams or something like that, that's all based on SaaS services, and they've got huge amounts of network infrastructure that's handling all those video aggregations and all that sort of thing. Now, you can do all that, but it means that you've got to build all that infrastructure up internally yourself. So.
Thanks, Andrew. So we've got another one. What key features would I find in Zimbra that Microsoft doesn't already offer?
I think I think primarily it's around it's the open standards support. I mean, say because we're an open source core, we support a lot better at an open standard. So things like CalDAV and CarDAV are not really supported by things like Exchange and so on. So it's a lot around the open standard stuff. So and also some of the kind of the public sharing capability. The fact that because we're supporting these open standards, that's usually where things like Zimbra win out, is because we try and support as many open standards as possible. It means that it's much easier to you know, sort of push data out, whereas obviously proprietary systems, particularly, you know, the nature of them being proprietary means that you have to use their tools or whatever. They don't necessarily publish everything on via open standards interfaces.
You've talked about Zimbra Web Client. Do you also have a desktop app available?
Oh, it's interesting you should ask that. Yeah, so we have had a desktop client in the past, which is still available, but we don't support it anymore. But having said that, we are literally in throes of doing a beta test of, we're doing a beta test of the latest Zimbra desktop version. So that is currently in beta. I think it's slated for release sometime in the next quarter. So yeah, it is coming very soon. So yeah, there will be a Zimbra desktop.
All right, so let me see. Okay, I can see another one. When will Zimbra be available as a mobile app?
It's available today, actually. So it is. We do have a mobile app that's available on the Apple Store and also on the Google Play Store as well. So that was only released a few weeks ago, something like that. So yeah, there are mobile apps for it.
Thank you. I don't see any other question coming in. So feel free to ask your last questions if you want to. Yeah, go ahead, Ansgar.
Yes, thank you. Okay, now we have the right time to finish our event, I think. But if you have some questions, just put them into the chat. And on the other hand, I would say thank you very much for your attendance, for your time, for your interest in Zimbra, and hopefully you got some really useful and needful information. And we will continue our series of events in 2 weeks. And the next event we will have is something that might be interesting for users from Zimbra as well, because this what we will present in 2 weeks is our solution Benno Mail Archive, an email archiving solution which is necessary to have in Germany due to financial regulations and compliance efforts every company has to solve. And we will present Benno Mail Archive as an easy-to-use and very neat solution for mail archiving and quick search and so on. So if you are interested to see what's going on with Benno Mail Archive, feel free to contact us and to register to our event in 2 weeks. This will be in German language, and yes, you can find some detailed information on our website, www.lw-systems.de. There you find the information page about our event series, LW Systems Online Days. And so I will finish from my side now. Thanks a lot for your attendance. Have a nice time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.